Hey guys, welcome back to my next tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to use instrument racks in Ableton Live. It's a subject that was started recently there in our class, and some of the guys who are new to Ableton found it quite tricky to get their head around, which is fair because instrument racks are quite complex in Ableton. I thought the first thing we would have started off using was the impulse instrument, but sort of went on a deep end using drum racks and instrument racks just for beginners who have never touched the software before, so don't be scared. It seems quite daunting, but trust me, if you can get your head around drum racks and instrument racks, then you'll be flying with the rest of the software, so you will in no time, because they're pretty complex tools and what you can do with them. So if you got a wee bit out of the class, then you're laughing, and hopefully today, whenever I do this tutorial, you'll have learned a good lot more, and I'll take my time and go through it and show you things step by step and what I'm doing and any presets I'm using, how they're doing, what they're doing, and just sort of try and make things as clear as possible for you to understand, so that you'll have a better grasp of it next time you go to do it yourselves. So we'll get stuck in here straight away and open up Ableton Live. Okay guys, if you just want to go ahead and open up Ableton Live, and we'll begin. We'll just let it load up for a second. Okay, so when Ableton opens up, you should be looking at something similar to this setup here. And today we're only focusing on instrument racks. So if we navigate up here to the Live Devices folder, we have instrument rack. What we want to do is drag an instrument rack onto a new MIDI track. I'm just going to open up the track so we can see the full title here, and I'm going to delete the audio track because we won't be using that today. We'll just be focusing on the instrument rack. So within the instrument rack, we can see down here at the bottom it says to drop MIDI effects, audio effects, instruments, or samples here. So you can do any of these. What we're going to do is we're going to drop instruments in for now. I'm going to use the silent just because it's the most commonly used plugin I've seen guys using in producing. It seems to be a very popular plugin out there at the moment. Most of the tutorials I've watched are guys using silent, so I'll use that for the purpose of this tutorial. But you don't have to. I mean, go ahead and use any plugins that you have in your plugins folder, or even live instruments you have here. And any guys in my class looking at this thinking they don't have all these instruments here, don't worry. This is the Live 8 suite, and I'm not sure, you may not have everything that's in here on the older version or even on Live 8. This is the suite version that comes packed with all the additional I think there might be more instruments, more audio effects, sorry, and there's a huge collection of presets of those instruments that you may not have. But go ahead and use your own plugins if you have them installed on your computer from your plugins folder in Ableton here. And say I'm going to use silent here today, but I'm just going to take you down here first into the instrument rack. So with 4 icons here on the top left hand corner of the rack, and from looking at it here, this whole section to the outside here, where my cursor's running down, this is the outside perimeter of the rack. So we've got the top one here is just a basic on-off switch. So if you're using maybe some instruments and other tracks, and you just want to turn that one off for now, maybe to save power, if you have a lot of instruments loaded up in it, you can just switch it off. But we're going to keep it switched on. You have another 3 icons here. The first icon opens up your macro controls, which we will be getting into later on in this tutorial. And the third one is your chain. This is where you'll drop MIDI effects, audio effects, instruments, or samples to. If you try and imagine like an outboard unit, like for all your outboard gear, for stacking all your equipment, like your effects and maybe some hardware synths. This is like a software emulation here of how we're going to stack them, where we're going to stack them. So I mean, if you open up like a MIDI track, I'm just going to right click here and insert new MIDI track, with drag and drop silent on the new MIDI track. We can see here in the new MIDI track that there's silent, and instrument rack is quite better for layering up instruments, because in a normal MIDI track, if we tried and dropped another instrument onto the track, you can see that the silence disappeared and it's replaced with the other plugin. So I'm just going to delete that. We'll go into our instrument rack again. What we can do here is we can load silence into this boxed area. You'll notice once you click and drag a plugin into this area, there's a black like rectangle. It's just to indicate that once you let go, the silence will drop into here. So there we go. There's a silence loaded up. What we can actually do, sorry, is take another silence and drag and drop it into the box. Now, to be careful not to drag it on top of the actual instrument like that, where you see the rectangles just only around there, because it'll just replace it with that instrument. You want to see this rectangular box around this whole area, and you let go with another silence. We'll just take a third, we'll just take a fourth. So you can see here with 4 instruments in the one MIDI track. I'll move these about just so you can see. There we go, with 1, 2, 3, 4 silence, you know, and this looks a bit mad at the moment, but don't worry, we're not going to be using even 5% of what this can do, probably not even 1% of what you could possibly do with it, but it's great what you can do with this instrument rack. And I mean, you can go ahead and try your own ideas by dragging and dropping different instruments in. It doesn't have just to be one instrument. You can put in multiple instruments. Let's see, if I go back into the live device browser, we've got the analog in Ableton Live, their instrument, and drop it in. You can see down here, I'll just get rid of the silence, that the analog is loaded up down here now in the live devices. If we load up an electric, drag and drop it into the wee rectangle box with an electric, so with 4 silence and an analog and electric. And basically what this allows us to do is, if we double click on a clip slot in the instrument rack to open up the piano roll editor here, what we can do is we can program in some notes. And I'm actually going to make it a 2-bar loop. So if you go down to your loop length section here, where it says 1, and just click on it, and then key in 2, we've now changed it to a 2-bar loop. And I'm going to hit Apple and B. On a Mac, on a Windows computer, it would be Control and B, and you can see the cursor changes to this pencil tool. You can also do it up here in the global controls, where your record play button are. Settings, you can highlight it to turn it on so that it's on in the grid editor, or if we turn it off, it's just the cursor again, and you would have to double click to key the notes in. But just I usually use the shortcuts. It's quite useful to learn the shortcuts just to get things done a bit quicker. So that's Apple and B. Just going to hit a few notes in here on the key of C3, and just a few random notes to get us going here to get some sounds played back. And back into the rack. So normally on a MIDI track, like in other DAWs, I haven't heard of anything quite like this before in any other DAW. I know that you can load up MIDI tracks and send a MIDI instrument and play the instrument, and maybe duplicate the track or copy and paste the track, so you have 2 tracks with the instrument. But this is brilliant. You can really put as many instruments in here as your computer can handle. Depending on the RAM size, really. There's no limitation to the amount of instruments you can load in here, and effects and samplers maybe, and it just, the possibilities are endless. Whatever you think of, you can think of doing, you can do it here. You just drag and drop it, and you're not also limited to just the instrument. What you can actually do is then, I'll just show you analog here, live device. You can go down to audio effects, and you can drag an auto filter in, just where you see this wee yellow line here before the end of the rack, and you have to make sure it's not after the rack, because if you drag and drop the effect after the rack, whenever you adjust the parameters of the effect, you're going to be affecting the entire instrument rack settings. But if we, I'm just going to drag this filter and pop it in here. You can see now it's within the rack. You can see here, this is the end of the instrument rack, so it's inside, next to the analog. So that auto filter will only control analog, and you can put filters in silent, and you can put EQs just in there as well. So you can have different effects for different instruments, and you can just have so many things in the one track, just to keep everything a bit neater and tidier when you're coming to your arrangement. Because this is will be coming into macros later on. I'll show you how you'll do this. I'm going to get rid of the EQ8. I'm going to take the analog away and take the electric away. So we've got our 4 silents. First, I might want to look for like a sort of bassy sound for us to listen to. So I'm just going to open up this first silent here by using this here little spanner tool for anyone who's not familiar with it. I know a few guys in my class are just starting using the silent and maybe haven't got their head around it yet. If you just select the wee spanner tool, this brings the silent back after you've closed it. If you hit this little red box, or sorry, red X, close the silent, and we can always call it back up again by selecting the spanner tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just solo this silent down here where the little S is. If we just click on solo, so we're only going to hear the silent being played back, because we don't want them all playing yet, because they're all the presets once we've loaded them up in silent. So when we hit play, according to the MIDI notes that we've keyed in here, it'll just play back the ARP 303 saw. You know, so don't want that there. I don't want to use that there preset. So I'm just going to navigate to a different one, and the way you do this is just here where it says ARP 303 saw. Just click, and it brings up the list of presets within silent. And just going to scroll down till I find a nice bass sound, maybe a Moog bass, and hit play. Maybe add another few notes in. Yeah, so we'll leave it like that for a moment, and I'm gonna go into the next silent here, and I'm gonna solo the second one, just so you can see the blue icon lit up within the second silent. And as you can see at the minute, the second silent is not open, and you can tell this. I'll just go back to the first one, because the spanner's highlighted. Whenever it's highlighted, it indicates that it's open, and when it's not, it means it's not. It's not. Whenever it's not highlighted, it's not there. So I mean, the first one was highlighted there, and the second one wasn't. So be careful when you're switching on to the next instrument. If it's not highlighted, and you go to tweak the parameter, what you're doing is you're changing the first one. So maybe you might want to just close the first one down, go into the second one, open it up with the spanner tool, and maybe look for. See, we've got a bass sound in there so far. We'll maybe get a key in there. Just going to select a few presets here. It might sound good for the purpose of this tutorial. Key 5th house. And I'll actually just select the other solo button as well. Just click on it. I've got my solo button set up here, so as I click them individually, they will solo. And I know in the preferences in live, up in live preferences, there is a way to, I'll just close silent, set up your solo buttons and record, warp, launch, and yeah, there's this here record section in record, warp, and launch where it says exclusive, which means, let's see, if you select solo and then go down here, if you select solo on each of them, it'll just select that one to solo, but if you take the exclusive solo off as you're soloing them, it'll just keep adding to the ones you're soloing. So that's just the way I have mine set up. I have the exclusive set to off, so I can sort of add up on the solos for each of the tracks to sort of build up with them. So we've got the sort of bass, the Moog bass notes playing there at the moment. What we'll do is we'll solo the second silent and open it up and play that back. Okay, got that wee sound going in there. So we'll close the second silent down, go into the third one, solo, and open it up. And so we've got key fifth house, and the Moog bass. I'm just going to rename them as well as we're going along here so we know what's what. So if you go to the first seventh, right click, rename, Moog bass, and down to the second one, which is key fifth house. Just call it fifth house. And the third one we're going to work on now. So let's see what we'll look for in here. Maybe get a bit of a lead sound going on in here. And you can see here along these presets in Silent, anyone who hasn't used it before tells you any preset with ARP next to it, that's just an arpeggiated sound, which means it has the arpeggiator activated. Just like a step, sort of let you hear them. They're sure to give you an idea of what the arpeggiator is if any of you haven't heard it. Yeah, so you can hear the arpeggiators active. You can see it's ticked in all them presets, but I'm not looking for that. We go down, there's key sounds, and we've got fifth house. I'll actually play big synth as well, see how that sounds in the mix with our instruments. No, I'll not go for that. House chord, maybe. Oh, sorry, that there last synth, we're hearing that. I don't want to hear that just yet. We'll just solo our first three again. Okay, so our third one, I'll just rename that now. Our house chord. And the fourth one now, I think we'll make a nice lead sound here. Maybe go for, what one is good? Let's see. I'll actually load up another bank here. As you can see in Silence, you've got 1, 2, and 3, and it loads up different sound banks, presets. So I'll just go into 2 and see if we can find one here that might sound nice. Old synth, we'll try that. No, it's not working for us. Maybe analog lead. Okay, so for now, we'll work with them. Oh, sorry, I've made a mistake there. Yep, I haven't actually opened it up using the spanner tool. Yes, so that's one to be very, very careful with. I've went ahead and changed the settings of the house chord there. I'm thinking that I've clicked on it here and it's opened up, which it hasn't. So I'll go back in the house chord and bring that back to house chord. Then close it, and then go into the fourth one, and then open it with the spanner tool, and then look for our preset we were going to use, which was the analog lead. And I'll just take all of our solo buttons off now because we've got all of them playing at the same time. Okay, and I'll just rename this one. Right click on the Silent, and we'll call it the analog lead. Okay, so we've got 4 silents loaded in to this instrument rack, and you may be wondering what's great about that. You could just have 4 MIDI tracks and load the instruments in, and you could do that, but there's something I like about these here instrument racks, and I'd say there's plenty more purposes for using them, but for what I've just started using it for, which might help you get your head around them in class for the guys who might be interested in using it, they're just starting, is using these macro controls. Now, what we can do here is we'll load up the first Moog again by selecting it till it's highlighted and using the spanner tool to open it up. And I'm just going to solo it and play the track back within our grid editor, the notes we'll have here keyed in. I'm just going to play that back. I'm going to adjust the parameters here to find out what sounds good to control with this preset. So anyone who hasn't used it before, don't worry. We're not going to get. I'm not going to get into it right now in depth here. How to use it. I'm just going to show you basics: filter cutoff, amplitude envelopes, which are just the main controls for now anyway, for starting off, for a bit of envelope modulation in our arrangement page, which we'll do later on here. So I'm going to play this first instrument and listen to it on solo. Okay, so I think I'm going to use the filter cutoff and the amp envelopes for the decay and the release. And in silent here, you've got part A and part B. And basically, what this is part A is oscillators 1, oscillators 2, and your amplitude envelope for each of the oscillators. And part B, if you just think of it as another one of these here, so you've got all these here controls in part A, and you can it's just double. Then whatever you have here, you can also have over here. Just you have 4 different sounds to generate here. You have 4 oscillators, you know. So all I did was switch between part A and part B and change the decay and release off this preset. And what I'm going to do here now is open up map mode, and when we do this, we'll have a window up here in the top left hand side. It might be any size on your computer. You just have to open it here. As you can see, the cursor turns to this expand window, and you can bring it in out as far as you want. And you can see this is the macro mappings that we're in here whenever we select our map mode. What this allows us to do now is within the instrument, which is our first one here, the Moog bass, we can select the cutoff, and if you just click on the cutoff, notice how whenever I just done that, the filter control cutoff just appeared in silent here. But we're not going to focus on that. We click on it and then go down to macro 1 and click map. Notice how up in the top left now we see here that this macro has now become the filter cutoff of the Moog bass, which is this track, and it's in Synth 1. So what we can do is go into our other instruments as well, so just be careful. The first one that I'm in, I'm going to close it down. I'm going to open up the second one, and I'm also going to adjust the cutoff, or touch it, sorry, while in map mode. Just click on it and down to the filter cutoff here in the macro 1, map it, and there we go, the filter cutoff for that macro, 5th house, which is the second instrument, and it's the synth. And go into the third one and just close the second one down, open up the third one, and we're also going to click on the filter control in the third one, map it to the first, and you notice how every time we're mapping it, there's just a list of mappings up here. So it's registering what you're asking it to do, and that's control the filter cutoff for each of the instruments with this one parameter. So we'll go into our fourth one and open it up and select the filter control and map it. Okay, so there we have it. Just a basic one to start off with, and I'll just go ahead and open up the rest of the synths, and it doesn't matter what way you have them as long as we pile them along here so that you can see them all sitting next to each other with their filter cutoffs, which is these controls that we're using. Open up synth, move it across. Now you'll watch, now that I've come out of map mode, once you select it so it's no longer highlighted green, as I adjust this filter cutoff, watch how all the cutoffs in each of these instruments will adjust accordingly with it in sync. You know, so that this is brilliant in terms of automation in the arrangement view. When you're recording the track, rather than having multiple MIDI tracks set up and having to make up multiple modulated envelopes, you can just map everything to this one control if that's what you're looking to achieve. It obviously all depends on the music you're making, but I think this is great. In terms of dance music, filter control be very popular for mixing in and out and blending things in and out together, and this is great because now we can blend all of these sounds in together with the filter cutoff and sort of mix them back out again together, and you just have to do one envelope, make up one modulated envelope in the arrangement page. But don't worry if you don't know about that, I'll show you that as well here later on. But I'm just going to map a couple of the other parameters, so I'm just going to close these down. And so I wanted to use the filter cutoff and also want to use the decay and release within each of the instruments. So I'm just going to load up the first one we'll have here, mode bass, and select map mode, and then I'm also going to click on the decay and map it to macro 2, and then I'm going to open up the second one, click on the decay, map it to macro 2, open up the third one, map it to macro 2, open up the fourth one, map it to macro 2. And in fact, I'm not even going to stop there. I'm going to do the same thing for the releases. So I've got all these open here. We're on the fourth one at the minute. I'm going to map the release to macro 2. Close that one down. Go into house chord. I'm going to just click on these icons in map mode, and click on the parameter that you want to modulate or set as a macro control, and you just click map, and it just, as you can see, the list piling up here in the top left hand corner. So click on release and map, and I'm also going to get rid of that one and go back into house or fifth house and click on release just on the channel or the actual parameter here. You just click on it and then map it and get rid of that, and then mode bass and click on release and map it. So I'll just set all these instruments up in the page here again, so now you can see what happens. Take map mode off. We've just mapped all the decays and the releases of each of the 4 instruments to this one control. So I'll open up the first synth and just move it over here so we can see amp envelope A. Open up the second one and open up the third one, and hopefully we can fit the fourth one in. Pardon me. Okay, there we go. So macro 2, which we just assigned all of our decays and releases to, as I adjust this parameter, watch how all of the decays and releases are synced to this one control. Therefore, whenever we do one envelope in the arrangement, modulate it using this macro, we're going to modulate all of these parameters. So that's 8 different channels you're going to be modulating with one control, you know, and it doesn't stop there. You can actually go ahead, you could map every single channel you see here to one macro if that was what you're trying to achieve and what you're doing. You know, you could have every single one of these all running in sync with the one macro. You know, it's just brilliant how it does it. I suppose you could do this also with MIDI mapping. But I just find this is so much easier to have it all in a rack. If you know what you're looking to work on, the cutoff, the envelopes, maybe some effects, you can just do everything in the one instrument in the one MIDI track, and I just think it makes things much more easier and more tidier for when you're working on the actual recording. So I'm just gonna take all these here away now. Just click on the sorry, the red icon, and I'm going to just play what these notes will have in our clip, and I'm going to modulate these two macros now, and you'll just hear the sounds that you can create from mapping those parameters. So we'll hit play. Okay, so there you have it. There's just showed you there how to load up 4 instruments into an instrument rack, and also how to map the parameters. Another useful tip here, what you can do is, now we know that we're controlling all the filter cutoffs with the first one, so we'll just leave that as it's named. It's called itself here, the filter control cutoff. But if we right click on it up in this area where the name is, and give it a color, I'll give it like a blue. Some people have color coding depending on the maybe effects of the instruments they're using. You know, it's probably a wise thing to do as you're going along, just so you can remember what's what if you have a lot of tracks you're working on at the one time. You know, so it just makes things a bit tidier rather than everything being grey with just black writing in it. So with macro 2, what we're doing here is we're modulating the decays and releases. So I'm just going to call this one the decay release, and I'm going to give this a color of yellow. Now if you open up map mode again, you can see here that the controls that you've assigned to that macro with its color are highlighted, so it just makes everything easier to trace back. So if we had, like, we've got 4 controls, 4 filters to this one macro, we've got 8 parameters to the second macro. We could also have 4 in the third, 6 in the fourth, 10 in the fifth. You know, you can just keep going, and as you color them, it'll come up in this MIDI map mode, all the parameters that are linked to that. Just make it easier to see what's going on underneath the hood. If you want to go back in, maybe you want to change something, it just makes it a lot easier. Notice you've also got these minimum and maximum values, and what these are for. I'll load up a silent here again, which is our analog lead, and I'll just show you here. So for the filter cutoff at the moment, our minimum values and maximum are 0.00 and to the maximum of 1.00. So if I adjust the filter cutoff, watching the silent, the filter cutoff goes from absolute 0 to 10 on the silent, which is it's 1.00 in here. So say you wanted to modulate it. If you were doing a live set, you were using a mixer, and you didn't want the cutoff to go below a certain point, what you could do here is, because we're working in the analog lead silent, we'll select it here, the filter cutoff of the analog lead. We want to bring this up till about maybe 25%, or maybe 20, or just leave it there, 26. And we only want it to go up to about 75%, say. So what this does is it just sets a minimum and a maximum within that control according to this macro. So in the macro you can set it to absolute 0 here, but it won't go below what that reads as 26 sort of percent of the control, 0.26, whatever way you look at it. And once you turn up the filter control on the macro in the instrument rack, the way you've got it set up here, it sort of understands it in the instrument as well. So if you turn the filter control right up, it doesn't go past 75, 0.75 or 75%, whatever way you look at it. And so that's a good way of setting it up for live sets. Just so you know that if you're using MIDI controllers, you just don't want the sound to go too high up. You don't want to hear the highest frequencies the filter makes, or you don't want to get it too low. You can just have it in between where you'd like it, you know. So if you start mucking around with them as well, it can be quite good. If you are trying out stuff, maybe you want to, maybe it makes a wee bit of sense to you now from looking at that there, if you want to try stuff out with it. But I'll just see here, I'll close this silent back down. And one thing I haven't looked at here yet is effects. Now, there's so many ways you can do your effects in live. You can drag and drop them onto the track. You can bring them onto your return tracks and send the signals from the track into the return. And just I'm going to get into that later on. There was a guy in my class also wanting to know about return tracks, and it's very straightforward, so it won't take long to show him how to do it. But for now, I'll do this here just while we're working on instrument racks. I'm just going to turn MIDI map mode off here, and we're going to scroll down in live devices to look for a reverb, and we're going to get a reverb. And just remember, when you're dragging and dropping the reverb into the instrument rack, if you drag and drop it here, notice you're outside the rack, so the parameters or the effect itself will affect all 4 instruments, and that's not what we want to do. We want to put the reverb inside the rack. So if we just pull it in, we'll see this yellow line just in the inside, just before the end of the rack, and it's dropped inside the rack. As you can see, this is the end perimeter, this is the outside perimeter of the rack. So what we're going to do now is we can open up MIDI map mode again, and what we can do is take the decay time by clicking on it, and then clicking on macro 3, and then click on the dry wet, and then click on macro 3, and just unhighlight map mode. I want to copy this reverb, so right click on the title area up here next to reverb, right click and copy, and go into another instrument, and just at the end here, before the end of the rack and after the synth, right click and paste. And I'm going to do this for all the instruments. Right click, paste, Moog bass, and we're going to right click, paste. But although we have MIDI mappings for the decay time and the dry wet of the analog lead that we're done just there with macro 3, it doesn't actually copy those settings. So we'll go into the other instruments, open up map mode, click on decay time, click on map macro 3, dry wet, map macro 3, go into fifth house, decay time, map macro 3, dry wet, map macro 3, Moog bass, decay time, map macro 3, dry wet, map macro 3. So what happens is now, once you start mapping the effects and even the instrument, you can see here that there's green icons, wee squares next to the parameter, and basically that's just indicating that this parameter has been mapped to a macro in the instrument rack. And you can actually see, if you hover over it, this little orange bar at the bottom, and it says this parameter is controlled by the macro control of macro 3 of the enclosing rack. So if any of you are using the preset instrument racks and you notice these and you realise when you click on it and try and adjust it, you can't do anything with them like you can here, it's because it's been mapped to macro, and it can only be adjusted here unless you actually, you can just hover over it actually and right click, and if you go up, you can unmap from macro 3, but we want to keep it mapped now, so we'll just enter map mode and decay time map macro 3. So if you see my cursor on macro 3 here now, if I adjust it, you can see the decay time and the dry wet are modulating at the same time, and this is happening with all the reverbs that we've dropped into all the settings. So this macro is controlling 8 different parameters within the 4 reverbs, which is it's pretty amazing how it does it. Like, you know, it's just it makes envelope modulation a hell of a lot easier. I don't know why I haven't used these much before. I'm really going to start using them a lot now. I'm actually learning a lot just actually by doing this tutorial, showing you guys it. So we'll go into macro 3 and we're going to rename this our. It's going to be like a long swelling reverb, because we're going to, by the time we get from 0 to 127, the decay time and the dry wet will be up full, so there's going to be a real long swelling reverb from that effect. So right click on macro 3, rename it. I'm going to call this it's a swell reverb, so I'm just going to call it swell verb, and I'm going to give it a color. I'm going to give it a nice bright color. I'll give it like orange or red. So we're going to map mode. There we go. All the parameters that are mapped within the reverbs to the small verb, which is macro 3. You can see them here now, and it's just brilliant. You can just you can just change the settings of each of them. Maybe you don't want all of them going to absolute 0 or full wet, or the decay time full. You know, you can go in, set the minimum and maximum values of each instrument, just any way you want to manipulate the sound. So I'll take map mode off, I'll play the sound back, and we'll just use a bit of the swell verb to hear the effect. Okay, so yeah, well, after showing you all that, may as well show you a wee bit on modulation. I think that's okay to show you for now. You know, we've showed you how to load instruments into the rack, how to map them to different parameters inside the instrument by selecting map mode and selecting the parameter, and then choosing which macro you want to assign it to, and also a bit about the minimum maximum values, how to change them, and also drag the reverb in. But you can also drag, well, I suppose I'll show you another one here as well. It'd be worthwhile showing you, but I'm actually going to take the delay off any of these instruments, just to make sure we can hear exactly what's going on. So there's no delay on the Moog bass. I'm going to open up Fifth House. There's no delay on it. I'm going to open up the house chord. There is a delay. So anything, I'm going to take the delays off because we're going to add our own delay in here. Analog lead, open it up with the delay there. I'm going to take that out as well. So just play them back now. Okay, so with our reverbs in, let's try and get a delay in there now on top of the sounds. We'll actually leave the bass sound as it is. I'm not going to put it in there. Fifth House, I think I might want it in there. So click on ping pong delay, drag and drop it. Sorry, I'll stick it in before the reverb. I know that in live, when you drag and drop effects into the tracks, they sort of work. The track signal gets affected. The way the effects are laid out from left to right. So I think, you know, by having an effect, like putting the ping pong here, may have a different effect to what it may have on this side, because of the way the signal reaches the ping pong first and then the reverb. whereas if we have the ping pong over here, the signal runs through the reverb and then through the ping pong, if that makes sense, if you know what I mean. But we'll just leave the ping pong here for now. It doesn't really matter, just for the purpose of showing you. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to play the fifth house on solo first and hear what that ping pong's actually doing. And you see you've got an on-off switch here as well on the ping pong, just like in all the devices. You can turn them on or off if they're not really working out. You want to try some other things. So I'll just turn it off so we can hear the dry signal and then what it sounds like with it turned on. Oh, I'll hit play up here. Filter control, I think that's what it was. There we go. So you can hear the nice effect that ping pong's having on that sound. So I'm going to keep that there. I'm going to go down into the house chord and see what a ping pong would sound like in there. So if you drag and drop the ping pong and in between the silence and the reverb. And the ping pong delay, for anyone that hasn't used it before, it's sort of, it is a delay effect, but the ping pong, I'm pretty sure what it does exactly is it just pings and pongs from left to right. You know, from each speaker. As you're listening to it back, the signal just bounces back from each speaker. You know, to give it a nice cool effect, a nice sort of pound effect as well. You know, so it's good for that. You've also got a simple delay. But I would normally use the ping pong. I suppose both have different purposes depending on what you're doing. But ping pong is one I would normally use. So I've just dragged and dropped the ping pong onto the house chord, and I'll just turn it off, play the dry signal, and then turn it on to hear what it's doing to the track. You can actually change what way it's timed here. Let me just see what I'm going to open up the info box. Yes, beat division. It's saying here that each numbered switch represents the time delay in 16th notes. So yeah, if that means anything, just sort of listen to it and get an ear for it, and you can find out what sort of sound you want to make out of it. So I'll just select different ones here till we get the right sound. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one in there. Analog lead, solo, and drag the ping pong in between the synth and the reverb. Okay, so with ping pongs in the fifth house chord and analog lead, so we're going to make this our fourth macro control on modulating it. So go into map mode and go into fifth house, and we're going to select feedback, macro 4. Actually, I was gonna put the feedback and dry wet onto the one macro, but I'll split it up. I'll put down here in macro 5. This is going to be the feedback. We'll go into the house chord, click on feedback, click on macro 5, analog lead, feedback, macro 5, pardon me, and then select fifth house again, select dry wet of the ping pong, this is macro 6, select house chord, dry wet and the ping pong, map it to number 6, and select analog lead, and select dry wet in the ping pong, and click on map to this dry wet, which is macro 6. And I'm just going to close these. We've got the name here already, it's the feedback. I'm going to give it a color, give it maybe a green, and give this other one maybe a light sort of goldy color. And we'll open up map mode, and there we go. We have mapped the 3 dry wets from the fifth house, the house chord, and the analog lead from the ping pong delay. and it's affecting the dry wet. We can see we've got the feedback control from fifth house chord, and analog lead, which are all these instruments that we've renamed from the synth, and all coming from the ping pong. So what happens now is, there we go, we can see that these parameters are now mapped to macros, which is what this always means whenever you see these icons grayed out with the green box, and always see at the bottom the orange bar that the parameter is controlled by a macro control. So when you try and click and move them, they're not going to move, they're locked to the macro. So if you look over here now, the feedback will move up and down accordingly to that control, but also if we go into the house chord, it's moving in sync. They're all going at the same time with one another, and this applies for the dry wet signal as well. So what I'll do here now is, now we've got everything loaded up, I might do a bit of arranging, maybe put like a minute to a minute and a half together and show you a bit of envelope modulation so that you can start automating these parameters and maybe record into the session view. So I'm going to create a bit of a drum loop just to get this going, make it sound interesting at the start. I'm going to use Impulse just to create a quick drum loop. For anyone that familiar with Impulse, I thought we would have started doing it at the beginning of learning how to use Ableton in our class, but we haven't touched on it yet. If you want to learn how to use it, I'm just going to fly through it here because I'm really trying to show you instrument racks. Just creating a quick drum loop to do a bit of arranging for you with the instrument rack. But if you want to use Impulse, I recommend watching the tutorial that I recently uploaded. It's more of a workshop. It's lasted about an hour, and it's a real in-depth tutorial how to use Impulse, how to send the signal of each sample to different channels, how to send effects to each sample in each of the slots here in Impulse. So it's thought it'd be quite a good tutorial for anyone who's new to live. So if you want to, you can check it out. But I'm just going to load it up here, get a quick drum loop on the go, and I'm going to go into my external hard drive and look for where's all my stuff, where have I moved it to? My loops and samples library. I'm just going to go down into my Vengeance sample packs and maybe look for house samples. Get a kick. I'm just going to turn Impulse down because it's always very loud whenever you load it up. Turn it down to about maybe 6 dB or 7 dB, or minus 7 or 8 dB. There we go, just leave it there. I'll turn the preview parameter down here, which adjusts the volume of how loud or how quiet the samples play back here in the preview section. Right, okay, just do this quick. Got a hard kick and drag and drop. Some percussion. Okay, I'm going to use that sound. Going to use that one. Couple of shakers. Alright, that one. And snares and claps. Load that one in. Okay, so I'm only going to use these samples here, make a wee quick clip. I'm just going to rename this Impulse or drum loop and instrument rack. And I'll just keep that as it is, instrument rack. Sort of rename it. Instrument rack. Just right click on the clip to bring up the right click options, and you've got colors here, you can change it. I'm just going to rename drum loop. I'm just going to key in some beats here. Oh, clipping a wee bit. I'm just going to turn the signal down here. Just if you see it going up into the red here, just sort of turn your channel down. just going to go back into the instrument rack, turn the controls all down a wee bit. Okay, we've got a kick going there. I'm just going to do this quick with the drum loops. I tell you, if you want to get in the impulse, if I'm going too quick here for you with the impulse, watch the tutorial because it'll help. I'm just going to fly through this quickly for the drum loop section. Okay, just make a couple of duplicates. Drum loop. Turn the signal down, it's clipping. Okay, maybe duplicate that. Okay, right. Gonna start working with these here. Quick way of recording in the live. Go over to the arrangement view, either by clicking on the arrangement button here, or session or arrangement, or you can use tab on your computer keyboard. I'm just going to select tab, and I'm going to expand these tracks here so you can see this is the instrument rack, this is the drum loop that we have over here, and I'm just going to hold click. If you can see here, when you click on each of the clips, just once it highlights the clip slot. We're going to click on the instrument rack, click and hold, select tab, brings you to the arrangement, drag the loop to the start of the arrangement, go to the zoom in, zoom out window up here, you click and drag down and pull to the left, and you can see this is our clip from here. If we double click and the first clip we have in the instrument rack, this is it now in the arrangement view. I'm just going to click at the end of it here. Do you see this wee icon to expand it for 16 bars, which is 30 seconds, so we'll have two of these here to bring us up into the break. So what I've done there is just Control or Apple and D. You can just right click and duplicate, right click, duplicate, and right click, duplicate. So there we'll have those notes for 2 minutes in the arrangement view. I'm just going to minimize this window up here, this icon, just to get it out of the way because we don't need it, and pull this down, give us a bit of room to work with. And this is just our kick from our first clip. I'm going to bring that in here and maybe play it for maybe 8 bars, or actually no, play it for 4 bars, and then maybe introduce some other sounds. I'm just going to take some of these out. Okay, so I'm going to bring that one over into here, zoom in, drag it along, right click, give it a different color because it's a different clip. It's got more happening on it. You can change the name of it if you want as well, and take the third one, drag and drop it in here next to the last drum loop, maybe give it a different color. Okay, and we'll have that playing up until maybe half a minute, and then I'm going to take this one just made. So I mean, watch the tutorial on Impulse and you'll learn how to make your own beats there. I didn't want to really explain it because it was a full workshop in itself. I'm trying to show you a bit of arrangement within the instrument rack here. Don't be worried about these beats or these loops. It's the instrument rack that we're concerned about here. I'm just trying to get a quick arrangement made up to show you a bit on envelope modulation. Okay, so this is the notes to play for there, and last one in here, and this can take us up to our break. Okay, and what we're going to do, we can drag this drum loop two ways. We'll go over to the session view and we'll click on the drum loop title, drag it to here where you see just the black line in between the tracks at the top, and we can just slide it back to there, so that on the arrangement page we've got the instrument rack second here. We can move it up and down here as well any way you want. So keep the drum loop up the top out of the way. Open up the instrument rack. Okay, here we go, doing a bit of arrangement. Just click on the arrow, and this is where you're going to do all your envelope modulation. Basically, these red lines are your envelopes, and what happens is when you double click on them, when you see the cursor hovering over it, it turns to a blue line. You create envelope breakpoints, and basically when you create the breakpoints, as you move them, you're modulating that envelope. So you are, and you can just drag them about to suit. I'm just going to undo them because at the minute that's only modulating the track volume, the mixer. What we want to do is we have all of our parameters mapped to these 5 macros. So really all we want to do is have 5 windows, 5 envelope windows with these parameters shown, so we can see all these controls being modulated, and we can modulate them any way we want. So what you can do here is go on to the arrangement view. Now notice the minute it says up here mixer track volume. See if I click on to the filter control cutoff of the instrument rack, watch this changes to that parameter. So there you have it. There's the filter control cutoff. Now, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this little plus button. Now, I don't know about previous versions of Live 8, if they have this feature. I don't know if they do. It may have only come in at Live 8. If you don't have it, in fact, I'm not even going to show you how to do it. Basically what it does is it expands the window, so you've got your filter cutoff here, and then you can have your decay and release in the next one, and your small verb in the third one. Just keep adding every time. But for anyone who's using previous versions, I'm just going to take them away here just to make it a bit easier for you to understand. So we'll go up here into the instrument rack, select instrument rack, and you can see our macros, and we've got filter cutoff, which is our first one, decay release, our second, our swell verb, macro 4 we didn't do nothing with, our feedback, our fifth, our dry wet is our sixth. So we'll select the filter cutoff, and if we move the envelope up and down, look at the bottom, you can also see the parameters are moving accordingly with this envelope. So if we turn it right down and play that back, oh sorry, what happened there is if I hit play now at the moment, you can see that the arrangement the clips we have in it at the minute will grey out. And basically why that is because there's clips still playing on the session view. So whenever you're in the arrangement view recording, if you have anything playing in the session view, it'll not go back to what's just on the arrangement view, because you can play both. You can play the arrangement with the session view, but if you want to go back to just working on the arrangement view, you have to go up here, and this is your back to arrangement switch. So if I click on that, it's not red no more once I play it back now. Okay, so it was like that anyway. Double click on start, and what I'm going to do here is take our filter, create a breakpoint, and create another breakpoint, and just modulate it up maybe about a quarter of the way, and create another breakpoint here, and modulate the second one up till about halfway, and then I'm just going to modulate here, and then click here and pull this one up to the very top, just before our 1 minute break. Now your arrangement page might look different to this if I just zoom out. Your fixed grid pattern could be different if you right click. there's a fixed grid here. You can select 8 bars, you can select 4 bars, 2, 1. I think you grasp it. Like it just keeps changing the grid to where the grid sections are according to how you fix it. But it's good for whenever you're going to work on fine details. But for now, I'm just going to keep this selected as maybe even 2 bars, just to give us a bit more room to see what we're doing, a bit easier to see what's happening without getting confused. Okay, so we've modulated the filter so that when we play this back, you can see the filter is raising. Oh, sorry, I just realized something. I've got the analog lead on solo there. I'll just take that off. Sorry about that. So we can see the filter is being modulated. This is envelope modulation happening. Okay, so that's the filter. Happy enough with that for now. And if we just select this section here below the instrument rack, I'm going to the envelope of the decay and release. And what we're going to do is I'm going to keep it turned down till the halfway point, and then I'm going to create this step here, and I'm going to create another one here, and maybe another one in between here. And what I'll do is, if you take your pencil tool off by selecting it up here, and you notice the breakpoints are there. If you create a step anywhere with the pencil tool and then deselect it, there's breakpoints at each of the angles. So I'm just going to use these ones for now that I just put in, and if you double click on them, you can get rid of them. And so you can have them sweeping up till let's say, what's this here? We've got in 8 bars, and also just sort of have this one playing. You can just sort of adjust it manually like that if you want, and then have it sweeping up till the break point here, and then have it drop down again. Maybe not full way, maybe we'll keep it about there. So we'll just have a wee listen and see how that sounds now. Okay, so we can hear modulation there. Not really going for the perfect sound and mix here. I'm not really trying to release this or anything. It's just to give the guys an idea who are watching how to modulate envelopes, so you can understand what I was getting at earlier on. We can have our swell verb next. So we'll go up here into the swell verb. Because it's such a huge effect, by the time it reaches its full its peak, from 0 to like 100%, you'll hear the effect last after the clip's played. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to modulate this last part here. Select the pencil tool, remember, and you can just create a step with the pencil, and then take the pencil away with Apple and B. Click on this, and you can sort of see here, you can adjust it whatever way you want. So the reverb won't kick in until here, and then it'll modulate up with all of those decay times and dry wets of all the instruments from the way we set it up. So I'll just play it from here, and you can just watch the swell verb and the decay time and dry wet be modulated. Okay, we'll do maybe the feedback now. Sorry, we're in the swell verb. We'll do the feedback and the dry wet of the delays. And maybe we probably want to use these here in our break. So we'll just select dry wet, and this is where I'm going to have our break at the minute point near enough. We'll just let the drum loop stop here, and I'll just select our pencil tool, and we're going to, let's see, maybe have it sweeping for this long, and don't take my word as gospel, don't I'm not expecting anyone to copycat this tutorial. It really is just a rough idea. Take notes on what I'm doing. Try it yourself with different sounds and different instruments. It isn't sort of a tutorial. Really, you want to be following every step and making, because it's really just to give you an idea of how to do certain things. You might just you may get a light bulb moment during watching this, which is really what it's for. But hopefully it'll just help guys out. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the dry wet up till just after the 1 minute 30. We can tell here along the timeline how far we are into the track. So normally in dance, we'll have 1 minute to mix the track. We'll have our first break, maybe 30 seconds long, maybe a bit too long, but oh well, we'll just have a go with it anyway. So it'll delay. The delay will kick in for the last 15 seconds of our first break, and then we'll go into the feedback of the ping pong delay, and we'll do the exact same envelope using the pencil tool and drawing it in. And I mean, you don't have to use a pencil tool. I just find it very useful for using. You can easily double click whenever the envelope is highlighted blue. You can double click again, and you can double click again, and you can sort of set them up whatever way you want and do whatever you want with them. Just whatever way. Everyone's going to do it different. Everyone has their own way of doing it. I just personally find this is the fastest way of doing it for me. It works. So we'll play that back now, and now that I've shown you how to just select the instrument rack and go in and select all the macros, I'm just going to open them all up here now anyway, just so you can see. If anyone doesn't have Live 8, it's brilliant how you can do this. Rather than having to go back and navigate through all your modulated envelopes, what you can do is you can have your filter cut off and plus it, and what you do is you have your own automation lane for the filter cut off. Go into instrument rack, select decay release off our second macro control plus, and as you can see, you're getting automation lanes for all these parameters, so you can see everything that's happening inside the track. And so it just makes things so much easier for going back and fixing any mistakes that you might have had first time around. If you're using a lot of effects and a lot of instruments and a lot of modulation, it could be quite frustrating trying to look for those sounds that might not be working. So it's great just to be able to do this. So I'll take the first loop, and if you click and hold Alt and drag, and then it carries a copy of it. And if you let go of click and then Alt, if you do it the other way about, sometimes it doesn't work, so you let go of click first and then let go of Alt, and it drops a copy of the loop in there. So we'll play it from where we're modulating it, and we can hear what's happening, and then also we'll hear the ping pong delays kicking in here. So I'll preview it, flick through it again, let you hear it. And just keep an eye out for the ping pong and watch the feedback and dry wet. I'm just going to add in some reverb as well. This is a good thing, you can modulate everything while it's playing back. Sort of just stick more maybe delay in there after the drop. And you can sort of just adjust it so it sort of sweeps back in. Take another loop. Okay, I think that there'll pretty much do it for the introduction to instrument racks for beginners. So just for a recap, what we've done today was we loaded up instrument rack from the Live devices browser in Ableton Live. We assigned it to a MIDI track. We then loaded 4 VST instruments into it, which was the Silent. Although you don't have to use it, you can use any, so try that out and experiment. We also opened up each of the instruments and selected map mode and selected different parameters and mapped them using several controls within each of the instruments to be controlled by one parameter. And we also had a look at dropping effects within the rack in the instruments, and you can have different ones in. You may as well just we've sort of used a reverb on all of them and a ping pong on all of them, and you can sort of have distortion on one, and you can have a panner on the other. You can have a flanger on a third, and you can map the flanger, dry wet, and the pan and the filter all to the one macro for the different instruments. So as you modulate it, you're going to have a real serious effect there. You're going to hear 3 different sounds with 3 different effects all being mixed in sync with one another. So that's pretty amazing that it does that. So play around with those sort of things as well. I made a quick drum loop and impulse just to get a bit of arrangement going. Again, if you wanted to see how I was doing those loops so fast, for anyone who's just new to it, go over and watch the impulse workshop, which is pretty useful. And then we've done a bit of arranging, also looked at envelopes inside the instrument tracks and how to modulate the parameters. So quite a bit covered in this tutorial today. Don't be intimidated now from watching it. Anyone who's new, it seems quite extreme, but don't worry, it really isn't. Once you will get your head around it if you just stick at it. I hope I explained it well enough for you to understand. If anyone has any feedback on how I could actually improve, go ahead and please leave comments. And if anyone has any questions at all on how to use anything in Ableton, I'll be more than happy to try and find out if I don't know, or if I do know, be more than happy to share what I do know with you. So hopefully you've liked this tutorial, and I will be doing my next one on how to use drum racks for beginners in Live. So thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.